Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Pick it up next week. Laboring for your liberty, singing secrets freely to those whom would lend ear. Beware of ciphers dressed in partial truth, decorated in luxuriance and sold for profit as candy to the masses. Sharing truth is sacred duty, obligation we should assume without expectation of tribute or reward. We must give without restriction, goading others to remembrance, in seeking catalysts to their own soul's awakening, purpose, and revelation. Condemned by callous wardens, harassed by their zombie slaves, most are aware of the razor wire, the steel doors and windows lined with bars. Indoctrinated to mind and veiled from periphery, caging those unsure of the bondage and hidden remand. The overseers celebrate the fostering, subtle imposition of a matrix which grants the illusion of freedom, access to excess and pleasure, quarantined by duress and the mask of false liberation. Those revealing mystery are designated insane, labeled quacks, their reputations dismantled, respect annihilated by those sovereigns in charge of asylum, regulating the cuckoo's nest, holding all victim to charade. Complicit in our own oblivion and that of our families, we're compelled to police self, vaccinating past and future generations, unknowingly pledged to betray loved ones, children, parents, and even self. Puppets on fiscal strings, they scramble, ravenous, fighting over the meager residuals, leftover scraps fallen from the cornucopia of demons, congregating to dance for the devil's symphony. The Lord of this world wears all masks, presenting himself benevolent to those who cannot make sense, nor decipher the depth of the illusion. Funding both sides of the grand war, each battle horrific jubilation, celebration of the decimation, pawns strategically placed as cannon fodder for good slaughter. Orwellian division, brother enemies contending ideas, propaganda inciting contest and the spilling of blood, war the clandestine ritual, sacrificial feast for the feathered serpents, aggregated for mad carrion frenzy. I whisper to them who would attend, this way to paradise, those of you seeking, willing to digress, desiring truth, freedom, remembrance, compliant even to sacrifice self on the altar of Christ at the expense of this world. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. That was forward until dawn. This is Momentary Zen, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to be revealing those esoteric truths of which I wrote about in this previous poem. And we're going to help you to understand the Matrix. And when I say us, I have as guest and friend Loren Pedersen is riding shotgun with me this evening, and he's going to share commentary on all the things that we're going to be covering and exposing and helping you to make sense of the world and our place and part within it, as well as those things which occurred prior in our previous embodiment, our spiritual incarnation, which led to the current war and embodiment we find ourselves in a fallen flesh form, in a fallen world where we're compelled to buy into the whole belief in materialism and the 9 to 5 and be good taxpayer and worker bee and slave for the slaughter and work all your lives until you're finally 65 years of age and worn out and too old to even make sense or enjoy what we have left of life. The reason they have Social Security and the so-called golden years established at 65 is because most do not make it to that point. And that's the travesty of a dying race of humanity and the whole belief system we've bought into. But we'll go into that. Anyways, Loren, are you there, brother?
You bet.
Well, thanks, brother, for taking the time to join us. Do you have any commentary or anything as far as that poem that I read, or do you want to tell people about your projects, what you've been up to since the last time you came on?
Well, that's the first time I have heard of that poem that you read, and it's like, wow, wow, that's a deep poem.
Yeah, I like that one. I think it explains, what we're dealing with as a world.
It sure does, and it's like it's not like when you watch certain movies or read certain books or listen to certain poems. It helps to be in the right frame of mind. So when you are in the right frame of mind to soak in the fullness of a poem like this, it just becomes so, like mind opening.
Right.
It can become like, the scales come off your eyes.
Right.
And you see the true reality behind the matrix that we're involved in, that engulfs us every single day and night.
Absolutely.
If you have any sense of righteousness in your heart, you just want to throw up at the reality that surrounds us.
Yeah, I remember the first waking up. It was like that for me. Go ahead, Lauren.
Well, yeah, and you just, like today, I had that moment today, folks, and it was a really kind of a depressing day towards the end of the day. It started with a golden hope, and as the realization of what somebody else was doing to my world, okay, that has the potential now of trashing something I've worked 23 years on.
Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that, brother.
You see what I'm saying? So you have these people that are above the law. Laws are for little people. Let's face it, folks. The laws are for little people. The big people can do whatever they please.
Yeah, those that have the money to twist it.
Yep.
Justice is about, just us.
Yeah. And when your eyes open up to this reality, You know, it just sickens a person. And sometimes I feel like if I could call forth the seven thunders, I would right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Those are the real bad boys God has on reserve towards the end. Okay?
Right.
Boy, anybody who's still here on this planet, you'll wish you weren't.
Exactly.
Yeah, it won't be a nice day for those folks.
Yeah, they can skirt it for momentary, this short period of time, but at some point, judgment will ensue. The harvest and all that, that's when real judgment will come upon their heads.
That's right. That's right. So, I have a radio show called the Pedersen Chronicles, and it's sponsored by a friend of ours, both Zen and myself, who calls himself John the Baptist, and he has a regular internet radio show called Tribulation Now, and we all delve into these advanced topics. And we all have maybe a little different niche, maybe a little different direction where we initially come from. But it's amazing when we all look at the same amount of data that's so similar that we come to similar conclusions. We might be coming from different directions, but we come to a central area where that information starts to congeal in a similar pattern, a similar understanding. Does that make sense, then?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's the, wonderful thing about the times that we're living in. Because, it was like back in 2008 and really 2006, 2004, when I woke up to all of this. I started doing my radio programs 2008 myself personally. I had been asked to be guest on other shows since 2006, but when I first woke up and started talking about a lot of these things, there was not a lot of people that were on board as far as the discernment, the revelation that I was being led to, specific on as far as like Cain and the dual seed lines and pre-existence, predestination, those things. But now there are more as far as confirming witness, and we found each other. And even though we've all been doing work individually along the lines that we have, writing books, radio shows, websites, whatever, it's such a beautiful thing for us all now to be that confirming witness for each other, and to have fellowship, and to be able to come on shows such as what we're doing this evening, in sharing dialogue and roundtable with one another, and to help each other in going that one step further as far as research and observation, and going down the rabbit hole, because it goes so deep, and there's so much connected to it once you come to discernment again on the things that we have. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to share truth with others.
That's right. And as you mentioned, the rabbit hole, it's really easy to get, there's so many rabbit holes a person anybody could get down into at any given moment. There's so many interesting, just think of it, Zen, what the interesting things that you have read and studied, the interesting things I have read and studied, the things interesting that John the Baptist has read and studied, and Kenneth Beer, and
Right.
and other people that you and I know about that have really deep dived, and sometimes, like we already said, that there's some areas that are similar, some areas of expertise, maybe somebody else. They deep dive into a certain area, you deep dive into a certain area, I deep dive into a certain area, and it's so interesting, but it's easy to get lost in the forest. You can't see the forest for the trees, get stuck in a rabbit hole somewhere. And that's where, think about years before the internet, before we knew of each other. So
Right,
you
exactly.
might have a book, I might have a book, and so we're reading these books or magazine articles, and because of the way we are, we are non-traditional, okay? I don't resent, I grew up in a traditional church, a Methodist background with traditional teaching, and I don't resent that one bit, okay? Because that established a solid foundation for my faith in Jesus Christ and a solid foundation in understanding, the fundamentals of the Bible and the Bible stories, okay? And that's all great and good, and everybody should have that kind of a foundation. But it doesn't. But God's word doesn't stop there. Okay, so what like you and me and John and Ken and other people we know, we are non-traditional in the sense that we have additional questions. Okay, we look at the world around us. We read these books that back in those days, few people would dare read those kinds of books, and we're not talking about bad books, or evil, mysterious books, We're just talking about books that, like Sitchin's books, or, the guy who wrote Charity of the Gods. What's his name?
Van Daniken.
Yeah, Van Daniken.
Right.
That Van Daniken and Sitchin were like the leaders back then, and there were so many spin-offs on those themes that they put forth, other spin-off books.
Right.
And that we have all maybe read, and those are non-traditional explanations of the world around us and these ancient artifacts. And so when you look at traditional church teaching, it does not have adequate answers to answer these anomalies, and neither does traditional science. Even though both sides would want everybody to believe that they have the answers for these anomalies, but their explanations can only go so far. And so when you look at the traditional explanation, like in the Pedersen Chronicles, I'm covering the what's known as the creation story, the traditional creation story, but with an angel wars overlay. Okay. How does the angel wars factor in to the creation story? And if you were to teach the creation story from a traditional perspective, you might, I don't really know how long it would take to teach from a traditional perspective, but it'd probably be somewhat quicker than with the angel wars overlay, because the angel wars overlay goes into just about everything from A to Z in science and mathematics and ancient history and the angel realms. I mean, it's like you almost have to become a quasi-expert on everything from A to Z just to bring these topics to the forefront. Right, Sam? I mean, let's say you're studying topic D, as in David, for example, but in order to get a handle on D, you have to study A, B, and C, and you also have to study E, F, and G, right? Because you find that D is not alone by itself, but it's interconnected with everything else. And so in order to present D properly, you have to study everything else that's connected with it.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I take the time to read all of the extra-biblical, extra-canonical texts, as well as all of the mythologies, the ancient mysteries worldwide of the various different religions, like the presentation of the Gnostics on the archons, all of even like the Greek mythology of the so-called gods and goddesses, the Hindu, where they speaking about the Asuras and the Devas and these demigods, and even things like the Nagas as the reptilian people, or the Chinese mythology on the dragons and how their emperors were bred from and associated with them, the Mayans on the Quetzalcoatl and the feathered serpent, and all of those things helped me to come to an understanding on what the seraphim angels were and what the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3 was. And as you said, as far as the angel wars, I mean, for me, that has as origin and beginning point even with what we're dealing with the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, what Christ speaks about in Matthew chapter 13 with the harvest and the wheat and the tares, and the enemy that sowed them as being the devil, and that he was the father of the tares. John chapter 8, where it speaks of Cain as being of that wicked one, or even Revelation 12, where it speaks about that ancient dragon, that old serpent known as the devil and Satan, and calling the Pharisees a brood of vipers. Isaiah talking about the flying fiery serpents. All those things. Esdras, second Esdras, the dragons of Arabia. All those things are connected. Even with, like, the past 4 weeks, Loren, I've been doing a series on the emerald tablets of Thoth, and talking about the Atlantean, the ancient mysteries and the association with that, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the war of the sons of light and the sons of Belial, or the children of darkness, the children of perdition. All those things are connected to and have as an origin the angel wars. And unless you understand that and how it ties into with the Psalm 82 sentence for humanity, that all of us as angelic beings shall die as men, and that we would take on form in the flesh and be locked up in these, in the matrix, in this prison planet system, in these flesh bodies. I mean, really, the bigger questions of who we are, why we're here, what all of this is about, all of that has, again, as its origin, the angel wars, and understanding that and how we got to be where we are now. Your comment?
Yeah, definitely. Um, just in what you just like the few verses you quoted from the Bible, okay, or chapters, there's so much just in the Bible itself that you can deep dive and get into various rabbit holes that
Right.
you can spend the rest of your life studying just the Bible, let
Right.
alone all these other texts that you've mentioned, Zen. It's amazing. And I grew up, again, in the church, and when I went off to college, then I became exposed to, it was a Lutheran college I went to, so I got exposed to Lutheranism, okay? And because it's a college, you tend to get introduced to more ideas and a variety, flavors of ideas and experiences and stuff. So then I went to some other types of churches, like full gospel or charismatic, that kind of thing, to get that sense of where they're coming from and things. So I kind of, through those years, I was exposed to different types of churches and their, how they teach, how they come, how they interpret the Bible, that kind of thing. But so often I ran into resistance on these advanced topics, and 30, 40 years ago, running into resistance, because so these types of, even though what you mentioned with black and white right there in the Bible, okay, you can clearly show black and white in the Bible what is being said or what's being implied. And back in those days, that's of the devil. Okay? That interpretation is of the devil. The Bible does not say that. Okay? So traditional teaching is fine up to a point. But when you go beyond that, I understand folks, that it's like the first time when you rode a bicycle when you were a kid. And there might be some kids who can just take off on a bicycle. They don't need training wheels. But I needed them. I needed training wheels for a while. And a lot of us do. We need training wheels. So think of traditional teaching as those training wheels. Okay? But you get to the point where you've mastered your bicycle. Now you can take those training wheels off and you can ride that bicycle without them. Okay? So those training wheels also, not just the traditional teaching, but in learning Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice and know my voice." Okay, so to know Jesus' voice in relation to our own individual experiences and how we are led by the Spirit. Okay, so the things that the Spirit brings to your awareness then might be a slightly different than mine, slightly different than somebody else's. Okay, but as it says that we're different members of the body as a whole. So it's like, well,
Right.
an eye says, I don't need the rest of the body. I can just be an eye. Okay, well, good luck, being an eyeball out there by yourself, It won't be long before you're stepped on and squished all over, or you just die a slow evaporative death, because you're not getting any blood and nutrients into your system anymore. So um, that's just a simple example, but
Right.
traditional science. I've just been reading recently. John sent me a book called The Cosmic War by Joseph Farrell, and he deep dives into these ancient mysteries and the angel wars and things of that nature. And I just finished a chapter dealing with
Really?
the moon. Yeah, dealing with the moon, and how it's like reading his book, and I'm sure like reading your books and material and stuff. When you read this stuff with an open mind, and I don't mean like a blank mind, okay, like nothing's there, you got to start somewhere where you're at, and you build upon that, just like a house. You don't just wave a magic wand and there's a house, presto changeo. You dig out the hole in the ground first. You put in your footings. You put in whatever rough, plumbing and things like that. Then you pour your concrete walls, and you build your, on and on and on until you have a finished house. It's the same thing how we learn about things. Okay, it just there's no presto changeo, wave a magic wand. Even when we get to heaven, do you think it's going to be automatic? We're just going to know everything? I kind of doubt it. I think we're going to have to go. Like John says, we're going to have to go back to 101, class 101 on a lot of topics, and,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
learn this, go back to the beginning and learn this stuff the right way,
Hey, hold on, Loren. We'll be
yeah.
right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. We were talking about before we went to break how pivotal and important it is for people to understand how the angel wars, even though for most, because it is a vague topic and there's not been a lot written about it. That's one of the reasons why I'm currently working on a book on this particular topic and kind of trying to tie in as much information as I can find on it with the various topics which are associated and interdependent upon it as revelation. And so it's been quite an endeavor. It's already 300 plus pages, and there's so much more I have yet to comment, to share commentary on. It'll probably end up being maybe at least a 2-part book, but when I get to that point of finishing publication, because I've been detracted in a couple other areas of pursuit, of which I have a couple announcements I want to share with the listening audience. First off, I did finally, thanks to my friend Maria Juarez Pulido, who has translated 3 of my books into Spanish. I just finished and formatting and have released, as of late last night, the Spanish translation of Skyfall. And so currently, Lucifer, Father of Cain, my 4th book, and my 7th book, Skyfall, The Angels of Destiny, Pre-existence, and the pre-election of spirit, those 2 are available in Spanish. So if you know anybody that could benefit from reading them in those languages, they are available. I know that there's a huge population of individuals that are predominantly Spanish speaking and are not familiar or not able to read in the English dialect. And so I'm hoping that it will bless that group of individuals, that group of people, and that it will share this information. Because in the translation of those books and the effort that she has put forth, she has also made available to that targeted audience source reference from many, many texts, scriptural texts that are not available in Spanish, and that I cite and reference over 200 different disparate and individual, just a myriad collection of extra biblical and extra canonical works in each one of my books. And so, for the first time, all of those quotations and references from those books are also available in Spanish. And so I'm hoping that that will pique a lot of interest, and will also, others will put forth effort to, once they are interested and have their interest churned in these particular texts, and find out that they are available and out there, and most of them are only translated into English from their original vernacular, that somebody will put forth the effort to translate them as well, and that will just bring on more wisdom and more revelation to to what, because a lot of Spanish speaking nations are predominantly Catholic, and but they don't have all this information available to them. And so those two texts are available you can contact me at zengarcia.com. Just send me an email. I'll be glad to make them available, autograph them for you or anybody that you know that would benefit from them. But anyways, another thing that I wanted to announce is that my friend Alexander, I'm not going to give his last name, because Dr. Stephen Guide, who is the individual that deciphered the Thracian script and made available through his 3-book series on the Thracian script decoded, has translated and shared with us portions of the Thracian Chronicles, which are not available in English. But my friend Alexander translated his work, in specific the Book of Atum and Ua, of which I did an 8-part series on radio programs, very extensive, lengthy text, and I did a show here on Revolution Radio where I shared information about the Thracians, as well as portions of that particular text, which is absolutely fascinating. And one of the things that helped me in my research and having studied and helped with the decipherment of this text is that it describes the Nakash, the serpent, or what the Gnostic or the Targumic text reference as the serpent in the garden in Genesis chapter 3. It describes him as the winged snake, the feathered serpent, the guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it was this text that helped me to bridge the gap as far as what the Nakash really was and how it ties into the worship of the feathered serpent worldwide, or the dragon, the seraphim angels, the rebel angels that were cast out during the wars in heaven, and how they were here before we ever were. And so that was just a profound, the whole bulb going off in the head that led me to revelation on so much more. But anyways, the reason I mention this is because there's another text called the Book of Longinus. And Longinus was the Roman soldier that had pierced the side of Christ during the crucifixion to confirm that he had already passed. And after he had witnessed all the signs in the heavens during the whole with his crucifixion, the blood red moon, the earthquakes, and the eclipse, all of those things, he became a disciple of Christ. And there's a whole book written about his conversion that is part of the Thracian Chronicles. And the Thracian Chronicles, which again are not available in English, are very extensive. They include these two books, the Book of Adam and Ua, as well as the Book of Longinus, as well as several other texts, and it's one massive collection. And he has agreed to assist me in translating them into English and making them available to the English audience for the first time ever. And so I'm very excited to be a part of translating this collection and making it available to the English-speaking world, because the most important and relevant aspect of this is that the Thracians as a people were ancient Christians, and they predated the ancient Egyptians as well as the ancient Sumerians by 2,000 years. And verifying that the Bible and the teachings of it, like the flood of Noah's day, and the teachings of the Torah that were given to Moses, that these teachings predated the Sumerian text, and that the Bible and the stories of it are not based on the mythology and the ancient stories as laid down by the Anunnaki, which make up and are the predominant focus of the Sumerian teachings, which to me is just an amazing revelation, and which one that blows away all of those that believe otherwise. And for Deep Blue, I am not a flat earther, just so you know. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it, but I have had some people ask me about it, just like Hijacker did in the last show. And of course I will look into it, but I am not convinced as of right now. But anyways, Loren, do you have a comment on the flat Earth? Have you looked into that at all, or on a comment on what I just talked about?
Well, if you, on the one hand, to the extreme, anybody can believe anything they want to believe in. So if you want to believe in a flat Earth, go for it. Okay, but if you believe in a flat Earth, then how does all the physics, the astrophysics, the geology, the archaeology of everything that we're looking at, and then through the lens of like the Book of Revelation of what's yet to come, okay? And can you interpret all that other stuff through a reality of a flat Earth? Does it make sense? And if the Earth is flat, then is the moon flat? Is Mars flat? Is Jupiter flat? Is the sun flat? Or do we live in a two-dimensional existence? Okay. So
yeah, those are some questions that I've had as well.
It's not just dealing with believing that the Earth itself is flat. It's everything else that you have to bring into the picture to prove or disprove. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
That's how
if the Earth was created flat, why would all the other planets not be flat as well? And if they are, well, then how is it that all the photos of all the probes and satellites that have been sent up by all the various nations of the world, how is it that they show the Earth as well as all of these other planets as orbs, as spheroids, as round and globe-like? Doesn't make sense to me. But go ahead, Loren.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I'm if you're really dead set on a flat Earth theory, then I'm sure you can come up with constructs to prove your point. But do those constructs hold up when you bring in, like you said, these additional factors, like the other orbs that are out there, are they all flat, two-dimensional, or are they orbs? Are they planets and suns that are round or spherical, that kind of thing? So, to me, it would seem obvious that the obvious answer is the Earth is not flat. It is an orb. It's spherical, flattened somewhat at the poles, wider at the equator. Okay, because of the centrifugal force is spinning on its axis. Okay, just like we as human beings, we get a little rounder around the middle as we age, and that's what happened to Earth. It got a little rounder around the middle as it has aged over thousands of millions of years. Okay, now think if and the audience, imagine, if you will, if the modern day church today, you roll back the clock 1,000 years, 2,000 years, and what if, instead of trying to bury these ancient records, these ancient written records, and do away with them or hide them somewhere, that they were actually brought forward through time, so that we today reading some of these ancient documents, especially that are biblical orientated but were kept out of the final 66 book canon, right? That they were readily available and that people knew about them, people had studied them, they would be taught in the churches and would include the angel wars dynamic. Okay? Wouldn't that be amazing? You have to wonder what the world would be like today if we had more of that, if it had not been cut off during these past 2,000 years or even longer,
Right.
So there's this huge body of knowledge and wisdom that the powers that be, the dark powers that be, have tried to cut off from the rest of humanity and keep it for themselves. And we find that like in secret societies. I have no doubt that the secret societies in the world today have these ancient records and the core. So like Masons, for example, you have 33-degree Masons, and some people believe that there's like 99-degree Masonry. So whatever the top layer, but the very top, the topmost layers are the ones that are the more you go to the top, the more privileged you are to have access and proper teaching and understanding of the most ancient of documents. Okay? So picture what maybe the Pope knows. I would venture to say maybe the Pope doesn't know what's in the Vatican Library, but it's people that work for him, that've been there for their whole lives or something. That's their thing. They're studying all these ancient documents in the deep bowels of the Vatican Library.
Yeah, it would be like the president, and because he's not privy to the whole UFO, the black ops, that kind of thing.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Let me make this. Go ahead and finish up your commentary, and I'll make one because Hijacker called in. And I'm sure he wants to make a comment on the flat Earth stuff that we've been.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's about it. I mean, just imagine what life would be like today in our colleges, universities, our churches, and everything if we had access and proper teaching of these ancient documents all this time.
Right. Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah, the revelation that would be known if people had access and knew about all these texts and had actually read them. But anyways, one other thing as far as because when you read the book of Enoch, it talks about and describes how all the winds work, the way the rotation of the earth, the night and day, as far as how the day and the night are separated, and that at one point before there was a tilt to the axis the earth, that there was perpetual 12 hours a day and 12 hours a night, and that there was perfect as far as equilibrium of the temperature. There wasn't the whole shift like along the equilibrium, the equator. There was perfect temperatures for growing season, and that's one of the reasons why the rebel angels, they built in that Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn zone. There wasn't any differentiation, there was no tilt, and there was no shift as far as the seasons like now because of the the tilt and the ecliptic, um, the winter and the summer and are different as far as the different hemispheres. They shift because of that wobble and that polarity and so anyways, Jacker, I know you wanted to comment on this, so we'll spend the rest of this segment on this, but after that we're going to go into this other portion of this show.
Oh, yeah, Zen. No, I don't mean to take too much time, but
Oh yeah, no
uh,
worries, go ahead.
now I sent you like 6 or 8 links. Did you get a chance to look at any of that?
No, not yet.
Oh,
Like I said, I've been busy translating this text and just got it done last night.
oh, okay. So you both are in for a shock. Um, in 1 week time, I'll predict that Loren, he's going to be a flat earther, and I'll predict that you're going to be a flat earther. And the reason why is because all, not some, all of the facts that we live on a disk, a flat disk, surrounded by a 150 to 200-foot wall of ice they call Antarctica, is true. All the facts. There's nothing that you can say that would make any sense that we live on a ball spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, spinning around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour as the sun burns through the galactic plane at 690,000 miles an hour. Basically, what I'm saying to you is everything that NASA, that the one world order, that these fallen ones who have taken over, they have constructed this godless evolutionary, you're insignificant because there's trillions of planets out there and you're just nobody. You're a third rock spinning from a sun, along with all the other planets, which they call wandering stars, our planets, and versus a system of, actually it's biblical. If you actually take a look at the Bible tells you we live on a flat earth, the four corners of the earth, the four winds of the earth. The eyes of the Lord go to and fro and can see all on the earth. That's why everybody from South America and Australia, when they look up in the sky and they see the stars, guess what stars they see? They see the same ones you see, Zen. They see the same ones at the center of the North Pole, which is the center of our Earth. It's magnetic north. Right above that is the star Polaris, the North Star. Polaris has not moved for thousands of years. If we're spinning through space, going billions and billions of miles in this galactic arm, then the stars would be out of alignment, but they don't. The North Star's up there, all of the stars like a canopy, just like it says in the Bible. I put the stars above the earth as a canopy. They rotate all the way around.
Well, I know you said all this in the last show. Let me just ask you this and explain this because we only got 5 more minutes on this. How is it then that the sun comes up in the east and then sets in the west? And how is it that there's night and day? If we're living on a flat earth and there's, and it's just one level plane.
No, you have to see how, first off, the sun is only 3,000 miles off the plane of our earth. It's only 32 miles wide, same as the moon. They're basically both identical as far as size. You can use a sextant and actually figure out where it's at. But they move, if you take a look on how they have the model on the flat earth, as the sun and the moon moves, you can see basically how the sun comes up always in the east and sets in the west. Okay, Zen, just check the links out. Thanks so much.
All right. And we'll do a show later on this after I check all that out.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be in shock.
All right. Hold on, everybody. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. I have riding shotgun with me this evening, Loren Pedersen, who's done a ongoing series, many shows covering the creation story of Genesis. I believe he's up to the 4th day now, but he knows about and has been speaking about and elaborating on in detail the angel wars and how all that is connected to the enmity between the seed of the woman, the seed of the serpent, the second world age, and our current embodiment. Mr. Roe in the chat room just put a link to a video. It's a YouTube video, and I clicked on it to check and see what it was about. And it's talking about I think it explains how the Earth, how the sun and the Earth interact as far as what happens during sunset on a flat Earth. And of course, I didn't have time to review the whole thing, but I have asked him to call in to elaborate, to share with us, and so hopefully he will do that. And anyways, and I have some good news for you, Doc Who. One of my friends, Danina, she has asked, let me make sure the individual's name, Anthony Patch. I believe that's the person you were talking to me about as far as the Saturn death cult and the CERN stargates and how all that ties into the Saturn death cult. And he has agreed to come on to the show, of which I need to make a few announcements as far as the guests that are going to be coming up. Next week, we're going to be joined by Carolyn Hamlet and Dan Duvall. For those that are familiar with Carolyn's work, she was part of the Illuminist families, multi-generational satanic families, and she's going to be talking about her, as far as the insider's perspective on all of that, and sharing with us the details of the organization and their belief systems, what is driving them as far as the New World Order, things of that nature. And also after that, Augusto Perez will be joining us the next week. We have also Douglas Woodward, who's going to be joining us and speaking about the end of days and the whole revelation as far as the blood moons, the tetrad moons, and Jonathan Peck, and other guests that we have lined up as well. And so it's going to be an interesting next few months. But of course, I'm going to invite Loren back on because we always have an interesting conversation. But I do need to go ahead and let y'all know that if you can, please do support Revolution Radio monetarily. We appreciate your fellowship, the interaction, the dialogue that you share with all of us, and many of you dedicating your time to support the network and the various hosts on Studio A and Studio B, and the interesting things that you bring to light, sharing with us, all the information, even like with things that I don't know about, like this flat earth, because a lot of my listeners have been sending me information on it, and as I'm so busy with all the things that I'm involved in, I have not had yet a chance to look into it. It really, honestly, it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not going to just say that it is one way or the other because I have not looked into it. But from what I've seen and what I've learned, it seems to me that we would be living on a sphere. But again, I have not seen anything to the contrary which would convince me otherwise. But I'm always open to learning more, and I never claim to know everything. My work has been focused on the dual seed lines, the garden parable, the revelation of all that has occurred, and that ties into the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, the whole exposure of the prior times, and the connections with the Nakash, the dragon, the reptilian feathered serpent beings, the Anunnaki, the rebel angels, or what they are currently parading as the ancient aliens. And so I've been trying to focus on that to help people to understand the strong delusion that is coming down the line, because it's my belief that so many will get wrapped up and caught up in that. And as the Bible says, they will buy into the strong delusion because they do not have a love of the truth, and so many will get swept away, and I'm seeing that everywhere around me. Let me get you to comment on that, Loren, because I'm sure, as one that's in the know, as being a keeper of the secrets, that you're seeing this as well.
That's right. The strong delusion. So that kind of ties in with what I was talking about, just before was, switching to commercial and then back again, is that what if for the last 2,000 years or 4,000, whatever, that mankind as a whole, and in particular us as Christians, in the quote-unquote Christian church for the last 2,000 years, had access to these ancient documents and had the proper understanding, proper teaching of them, so that we'd have an understanding today of what that is. So because we have not had that, we are at a disadvantage, or a lot of people are at a disadvantage, because when this stuff happens, we're seeing this strong delusion unfold before our eyes already. We're seeing it. And we can even look at movies for the last, you can go back to like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits TV shows that were hitting on some very advanced topics. You can take some of those shows and you can, talk about some real hard science that are displayed in those shows. And then like the original TV series Star Trek, and then later on Star Wars. Okay, so when I saw Star Wars first time in the theater in 1977, I knew exactly what that was portraying. The Lord had led me from 74, 75, 76, 77 through a series of books and magazine articles that just blew the barn doors off my thinking, that elevated my understanding so far beyond traditional teaching of the Bible that by the time that movie came out, I knew exactly what I was talking about. Okay? That wasn't science fiction, folks. The Star Wars series is not science fiction. It's tapping into our distant past, right here, even in our own solar system, let alone something that happened, in a galaxy far, far away. There's stuff that happened right here in our own solar system, even right here on this planet. And we're digging up these artifacts every day. But we don't have, because we haven't been taught correctly about this ancient history, we don't have the proper frame of reference to put this stuff into the proper context, if that makes sense. And so, if you just adhere to traditional church teaching, up to a point, that's fine. But again, if you're going to really ride the bicycle, you have to take the training wheels off. And in the New Testament, it alludes to that type of argument, but it uses milk versus meat. So if you stay on milk your whole life, you'll never graduate to be able to eat meat, the meat of the gospel, the meat of the Bible and the Bible stories, the meat of God's Word. Milk is fine. But babies drink milk. Now, I'm a grown adult. I like to drink milk with cookies and cake and on my cereal, stuff like that, okay? But I don't have a steady diet of milk and milk only. I've grown up. I eat a whole variety of foods. And I also like meat. I like a lot of potatoes. I'm a meat and potatoes kind of person, okay? So there's other things to nourish our bodies and our spirits and our minds other than just milk. So if we stay on milk, if we stay on the traditional, whether it's traditional religion or traditional science, we're going to be left behind. And the risk that the church is running into in adhering to the traditional doctrines only. So, for example, there's so much evidence of quote-unquote UFOs that have been around for a long time. UFOs, okay? So the traditional explanation from the church is, they're just a bunch of demons. Or Bigfoot, they're just a bunch of demons. Everything's just a bunch of demons, okay? Everything that you can't explain, some kind of life form you can't explain, it's just a bunch of demons masquerading as a UFO, masquerading as a gray, or masquerading as a Bigfoot, or masquerading as a 30-foot Nephilim creature. They're just really tricky, those demons are, They're just pulling all these hijinks and masquerading all this stuff. And it gets to the point of being lunacy. Okay, where when you put the science, rubber meets the road, it doesn't add up that it's all just a bunch of demons. So when those quote unquote demons come down with nuts and bolts spaceships, then what are you going to say about it? When they walk out of the spacecraft, nuts and bolts, you can walk right up and touch the spacecraft, and you're looking eyeball to eyeball to these creatures, to these Nephilims that are returning, the Anunnakis and all the other space beings, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Galactic Federation of Light folks that are going to be coming here in spaceships, going to be landing, going to be making contact with people, with world leaders. What are you going to say then? Oh,
Hey,
they're just a
hold on
bunch of
1
demons?
second, Loren. Real quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Rowe, are you there, brother?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, great. I just wanted to take this call real quick, Loren.
Sure.
I want to give you a chance to talk about the video that you had linked into the chat room, because I think a lot of people did follow it and pull it up. It is quite lengthy, so I didn't get a chance to review it, but you can bring some explanation to it and help us to get an idea as to how the sun would set on a flat earth, and any revelation that you can share on this, because as I said, I have not studied everything, and I'm always open to new possibility, because I do not know everything, and we are all learning from each other. So go ahead, Mr. Rowe.
All right. I agree. I got to be honest. When I first heard about this theory, I went in to prove it wrong. I was considering debating Hijacker on this, but doing my research and due diligence, I've come to kind of a 180-degree stance. And like any court of law, you would weigh the evidence from both sides. You would take a look, like any debate, you would logically look at all of the evidence and try to apply reason and logic and see what we can come up with. Well,
Absolutely.
Posted is basically explains what is called the law of perspective. And if, assuming we are on a disc-shaped plane or a pocket in an infinite plane of ice, if you will, with a sun that is basically going around in circles above us, as we travel in what we think is a straight line, we're actually traveling in a circle. That's how we can actually circumnavigate a globe. If you look at the map of the United Nations, if you start at one point and draw a straight line, basically around, you are traversing the globe. Well, you're going in a big circle, but from your perspective, you're going straight. So you do wind up where you started. Now, if the sun or a light is moving away from you in that same circle, as it moves further and further away, it will eventually hit the horizon. If you look at a set of railroad tracks, or if you look at a hallway, when it goes down to a point, it eventually all four sides come to a point, and you can't differentiate, up from down, left from right. So that's the law of perspective in a nutshell. And I would suggest that everybody take a look at that video. It is about 15 minutes long, but it does a very good job of explaining it. Because I had to look at it first for a while. I had to think about this. And I'm still on the fence with this sphere versus flat. Whereas, real quick before I go, is you can imagine infinite space. That's easy. Space goes on, supposedly, forever. Well, now, space could very well go on forever, but who's to say that this infinite plane, if we are on one, may also go on forever, or it may be a very, very, very large planetary body. We might very well be gnats in a brow of a celestial creature, for all I know. It's very easy for people to believe in things like jinn and demons and Atlantis and creatures from outer space and the hollow earth. These things could all very much still exist. There could be a hollowness to this flat plane. Space could be above us. And we may, who's to say? So that's my little spiel. I'll give you back your show. Thanks for having me on. And
hey, one second before you go, because I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So according to the video or the explanation, um, so how does the sun come up in the west and then set in the east? Is it spinning around us? I mean, and then Jacker said something about it was the same size of the moon. I'm just trying to get an idea for the celestial interaction, the dynamics of how all this could be a possibility. And so maybe you can bring some enlightenment to that just while you're on.
Okay.
Since you've studied it.
According to this model, the sun does not set. It doesn't change its elevation. It doesn't rise or fall. It simply remains on the same plane, spinning in a circle. Now, the moon the sun actually doesn't spin. Yeah, according to this model, this is what I'm looking at. The sun does not spin in a constant speed. It slows down and speeds up. That's what when you get the longer days and the shorter days. But it does go around in a circle, and the moon actually stays steady. So that's when you get the eclipses, when the moon actually overtakes the sun. And again, watching that video does put it in perspective. It's very hard to explain audio in an audio format. It does take he does a good job with three-dimensional reference points so that you can get a visualization of it. But just keep in mind the sun stays supposedly, I'm not saying I believe this, sun stays level, spins around in a circle, and it appears to just go away from us because we're talking about massive amounts of space here, miles and miles and miles from our perspective. A very, very slight curve does appear to be straight, except this curve is not spheroid, it's merely circular.
Okay, one last question, because I'm still, I'm failing to grasp this concept, but one last question. Jacker said something about that the whole plane or the, I guess the flat plane or the roundness of the Earth or whatever, that it's all encapsulated by an ice wall. Is that what keeps the oceans in and prevents them from, like, I guess, just spilling over the edge? Or how does that work?
Picture, if you will, a golf course, okay, with a bunch of holes. And just picture that golf course as a big ice sheet. And all those little holes are, within one of those holes is something that resembles the symbol of the United Nations, that map, that flat map where you have the North Pole in the center, and then around the rim is the Arctic Circle. Or, except it's not Antarctica as on the bottom of a globe, it's actually encapsulating the entire world. And the Antarctic Treaty, I forget the name, International Antarctic Treaty something, is composed of all the major nations on Earth, which are guarding that ice wall down there. Now, they seem to get along down there. They're fighting everywhere else, but down there, they're guarding something in Antarctica. So these are questions. These are just points, dots of intelligence. Again, I don't know. Personally, I find it interesting that we do not, in 2015, have a full, live, real-time video of our own planet spinning. I worked for TRW. I've been around satellites. I've seen them launch. I've worked on them. But we don't have, apparently, we do not have anything that looks at our own planet in its entirety. We have pieces, spy satellites, mapping, data satellites and things like that, but nothing that shows the whole globe. So I find that kind of interesting in 2015, that we aren't able to just go on the internet and say, hey, look, this is our big blue planet. You know what I mean? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's another point, just another dot. Why are some of these things classified? So, it would be the heaviest conspiracy of them all. Supposedly, the Legend of Atlantis is another pocket in the ice. Now, they being the eliminated ones, may very well have been to other pockets. They guard the ice, supposedly, and contain these worlds. So there is more land. That's the conspiracy, according to some of these people, that there are more pockets in the ice, closer than you would think. It's just, you just have to go out over the ice wall and get past there, and you may discover something new. Swamps, Some people think that maybe it's a geothermal thing, that we may be on a huge planet, a huge, giant ice ball. But that's speculation. So it's very fascinating. I like this kind of stuff. It exercises the imagination part of the brain. I do a lot of cryptographic analysis and forensics and things, so I have to use my logic a lot. But I like to exercise my my spiritual side, or whatever you will.
Right.
So,
As you speak, I have more things caught up in my mind. I know we're almost to the next break, but what about the people that, if they fly around the Earth or sail around the Earth, they go all in one direction and then they come back on the other side to their point of origin? If we're
right now, imagine if you, like I said again, if you look at the symbol of the United Nations, and it shows the globe as a flat map, that supposedly was taken from the real, supposedly, nature of the planet. So it is a circle. When you go in a straight line, you start in San Francisco, let's say, and you go in a straight line, you're actually going in a big circle. But because everything is disc-shaped, supposedly, you don't notice that circle. Now, if you were actually going to go, and according to these theories, the GPSs are faked. They're made to make you think you're going straight. But see, we don't really have that sense as a human species to know for sure if we're going straight or not. But there is a way to do it, and there's a challenge. The individuals that are proposing this said that they want to go to the South Pole and literally hammer stakes in the ground with cable and not use GPS and go in a straight line. And if they're fools, they should eventually hit the other side of the Antarctic continent and come out on the other ocean. But if not, they're going to keep going, and they'll go into the darkness over the ice and keep going out. So that's the challenge that's actually out there. The guy wants to put bets on it and have a billionaire fund it and the whole deal. I'm trying to actually get him on my show to have a really intellectual discussion with him, because he did work for NASA, apparently, and he supposedly painted the Earth. So ought to be an interesting show if I can book him.
Oh, well, let us know if you do, because I definitely want to listen in and check it all out.
Yep. And yeah, like I said, it is a big circle. I couldn't figure that out either. I'm like, well, eventually you're going to hit the ice. Well, yeah, but if all of your instruments are, going off GPS, and there are questions, and I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I have been doing an in-depth analysis when I can. I've also been calling Jade Helmet. Here's the break.
Hey, we appreciate you, Mr. Rowe. We'll do a follow-up. I'll do a whole show on this at some point, probably a month or two. Thank you, brother, for calling in. All right, hold on, everybody. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. First, I have to apologize that I was not able to get into the whole topic that I had, described this show on the ritual abuse and the dark conjuring, and that was going to be the focus. But I do find this interesting. Again, as I said, I've had several listeners send me information on this as far as the flat Earth and wanting me to look into it, and it intrigues me a bit because in school, when I was in college, I took astronomy as my science because I didn't want to take biology or chemistry or anything of that nature, physics or something like that. I did not mind going to the observatories and looking at the stars, which is the things that we did, and we learned about the planets and the sun and the moon, and from that class I was able to learn about the way that the moon rotates around the Earth, because and the way that all the orbits of all the different planets, and that we're spinning around the sun, and that is what even gives us like the way that the planets line up, and the way that they spin, and the retrograde motion of them, especially the interior planets, because they have shorter orbits than like the Earth, and that even the moon with the 28-day cycle of the moon, that we get the first quarter moon, that we see the left side of the moon, and that it is 6 hours. It sets it is above 6 hours before the sunrise. It's up in the sky, and then at the full moon is exactly opposite of the sun, and that's why we can see its full face lit up, and it sets exactly opposite of the sun. It rises at exactly opposite with the sun setting, and then the third quarter moon is will appear on the horizon 6 hours after sunset because it's below the ecliptic, and the new moon is facing the sun and moves with the sun, and that's why we do not see it in the sky at all, and we see nothing because it's the shadow of the moon that is facing us, the dark side of the moon, and we don't see any of it lit up at all with the sun. And from learning that, I also learned, according to which portion of the moon was visible, which direction I was facing, and which, and what time it was, just by the cycle and the moon's rotation, and when it was visible, and what quarter of the moon, or whether it was full or waxing or waning. All those things help me to understand the time of day as well as my orientation according to which direction I was facing. And if I'm on a flat Earth and we're just on a level plane, all that just does not make sense to me. And another thing, as far as a hijacker had said earlier in the program, that we have both that the same stars in the same portion of the sky are visible for both the northern and southern hemisphere. And if I'm correct, that's totally not true. And if somebody knows different, then please state it in the chat room. But this is why when we have the solar or lunar eclipse, and whether if we have like a lunar eclipse and then the shadow of the moon is cast on to the Earth, depending on where it is in its orbital rotation, different portions of the planet receive that shadow and are in that shadow, and those that are in the shadow can actually see the lunar eclipse, but those that are not will not be able to see it. And all that, again, is hinged on whether you are in the northern or southern hemisphere and which part of the world, according to the rotation of the Earth and the hour and the time of the day. And this also takes place for like the different meteor showers which occur in, like we have during the summer months, we have the I forget what but there's different meteor showers. One happens during the summer, and there's another one that happens during the winter, and those are predominantly visible in different portions of the world because of, the time. Of course, you got to see it at night, and so it has to be night, and you have to be in the darkness, which means that you're on the opposite side of the sun, because the portion of the Earth that is in the sun, that part is, daytime, and the opposite side is nighttime. And that all of that also works according to the rotation of the Earth around the sun. And if what Jacker says, that the sun is the same size as the moon, how are we just not, just floating out into space without something to hold us in our gravitational orbit. All of that just doesn't make sense to me because of um, the the class that I took on astronomy and those things that I just explained. And the Book of Enoch also talks about exactly what I'm telling you here, and it describes the Earth as an orb and the different, the 24-hour day and all of that. And so it would be, I don't know what kind of explanation would actually be able to, um, you know, make sense of all of what I just said in a different cycle. It just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I'm open to new possibility, and I will research it. And of course, I will do a show later upon it. But all those things that I just made mention, even with just the way that the moon, moves around the Earth, and the first quarter being 6 hours before sunset, the full moon being exactly opposite sun and rises when the sun sets, and the third quarter moon uh, rises and is visible 6 hours after sunset. So we see that one at night. The first quarter moon we see during the day. And so how all those things, I don't know. We'll see. But let me get you to comment on that, Loren, what I just talked about.
Can you repeat all that, please?
You're going to have to catch the archives.
Okay, I catch the archives. All right. No, I agree. At this point, I agree with you, Zen. And, when you study things like the exploded planet hypothesis, okay, that I've been reading from Joseph Barrow's book, The Cosmic War, and he also touches upon this in depth in his previous books, the Giza Death Star. I think there's 3 books that deal with that. And I also read about this theory 40 years ago in some of the books back then that I read about. Read those books, and some of those books dealt with the possibility of a 5th planet that was between Mars and Jupiter that got blown and became the asteroid belt. Okay, so if you put all that in a flat Earth situation, how does that work out then? Okay, how do you blow a 5th planet on a flat Earth scenario? Okay, and Joseph Barrow goes into the possibility that there may have been another planet further out from, like Pluto, further out, that also got blown. Okay, so there might definitely one that we know of, which became the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and the possibility of another one further out that also got blown. Now, reading in this current chapter on the moon in his book, The Cosmic War, the chapter that deals with the moon has led me to question, and this isn't a new question. Again, I think I probably read this type of proposal 40 years ago in some of those books I read, but what if the moon is an artificial construct, an artificial spaceship? What if whatever life was on the 5th planet, and or maybe Mars, who knows, but they got on board this spaceship that's shaped like a small planet and made their way to Earth, to colonize Earth. They came over here for safe passage. They got here, they parked this spaceship in the orbit around the Earth, that because we don't have access to that ancient knowledge anymore, we just say, well, it's the moon. And from a traditional Christian perspective, the creation story, we point to day 4, the greater light, the lesser light. And we think that lesser light means, the greater light means the sun, and the lesser light is referring to the moon. Well, what if that's wrong? What if the greater light is referring to something much more esoteric, and the lesser light is referring to something much more esoteric than just the sun and the moon? Where did that moon come from? Okay, the more and more the research is that the moon is not a natural body that should be orbiting around the Earth as a moon. So his conclusion, where he's leading, is an artificial construct, an artificial, possibly like a spaceship, is what I'm reading into it. And what if I'm going to read into it further. What if it is a Death Star? What if what we have orbiting around our planet is the ancient Death Star that blew that fifth planet and wiped out the life that was on Mars and rendered the Earth into a watery graveyard? This angel wars. Again, we typically think of angels as being these nice, fluffy creatures with wings and floating on clouds, strumming harps and singing nice melodies and everything. But we're talking about a broad range, a very wide range of life forms. Again, we have not been taught correctly that there was. Can I go hopefully a nutshell here of what I cover on Chronicles?
Oh yeah, certainly. Go right ahead.
Okay. If we look at Genesis, okay, first of all, the creation story has been misnamed as the creation story when it should have been named the restoration story. The 6 days of restoration of that which had become corrupted, warred, devastated, ruined from this as a result of this angel wars.
Yeah,
we're talking about
void.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about a real nuts and bolts war in the heavens. A war that even impacted our own solar system, even the very planet we're on right now. It impacted that ancient war from long ago. So when you look back, I'd highly recommend going back through all the Star Wars movie and then going to this one that's going to be coming out in December, and take a different look, not as science fiction entertainment, but glean from these Star Wars movies what might have been long ago, even right here in our own solar system. So Genesis, okay, from my viewpoint, Genesis 1:1 is talking about the original creation.
Right.
Genesis, the second verse, is the aftermath of the angel wars. Okay, and it's just one sentence, one little caption of the aftermath. So it's much more expansive than that. This devastation that happened is much more expansive. But that one verse is the aftermath. So between verse 1 and verse 2, it's known as the gap theory, but it's really the gap reality. That's where the angel wars happened. And Lucifer was the top angel that led this war of various life forms. So within the original creation, God created a smorgasbord of life forms in multiple dimensions, multiple universes. Everywhere you looked, multiple levels was a smorgasbord of life forms, because God does not create voidness. He creates life, because in him is life, and he is life, and he creates life everywhere, everywhere, okay? Now, when we get to this devastation, this war, the 6 days that's specifically mentioned is not 24 hours. It's ages, six ages, not 24 hours, but 6 ages of time, and each one of those days is an unspecified amount of time as we view time, okay? As we view time in Earth years, okay, we're trying to superimpose our Earth experience on something that is super cosmic, that happened so long ago. How can you put an Earth year designation on any of the ages, let alone going back to the original angel wars and then going back further to the original creation, how long that took, okay? So we get to these 6 days, 6 ages. And then we get to the 7th day, which was the day of rest, okay? Now I want to give a quick tie-in that the 7 seals of the book of Revelation and the 7 days of the Christmas story are directly tied together. I'm going to throw that out for a homework assignment. How can that be? What is the hidden... You think of Moses, for example. Moses. We haven't been taught the truth about Moses either. Supposedly he wrote down the first 5 books of the Bible. Okay? Now, whether he literally wrote down or he dictated and somebody else, like scribes, somebody else wrote down what he dictated, okay? But let's look at what Moses. He grew up in the house of Pharaoh as a potential heir to the throne. He was adopted. an heir to the throne. If you're going to be an heir to the throne in Egypt, they're going to teach you everything there is to know.
Right.
They're going to take you into the temples themselves and into the libraries and into the ancient documents that the common person absolutely would never in a million years have access to or be taught. Okay, so picture Moses going through the 99 degrees of masonry of his day, and the higher up you go, the more deadly the sworn oaths are. Sworn oaths to secrecy, that if you violate that secrecy, it is an automatic death sentence.
Hey, Loren, I just wanted to let you know we got like 5 minutes left on everything, and we've got a caller on too, so I want to give them a chance to make commentary. But go ahead. Can you?
Okay, so in looking at Moses' life, he was tapping in. He had access to some of these ancient documents and records that we're trying to uncover now on these various shows, and that we have now access on the internet. He was taught in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and that wisdom was immense. Think of what Moses poured into the creation account.
Yeah,
okay, so we read it in black and white, but there's multiple layers of depth of meaning in that creation account. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I think we got Doc Who on the line with us. Is it you, Doc?
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, welcome, brother. That you had a chance to call in, and did you get my my shout out
I did.
to you? All right, well, excellent. And it was Anthony Patch that you were talking about, right?
Well, that was one of them, mainly about CERN, but the other thing was Troy McLaughlin's work on the Saturn Death Cult.
Okay,
primarily.
yeah. You know what? Can I'm gonna get you to email me and send me his contact information because I'm having problem keeping it together. That way I can be sure to invite him on. But we got 2 minutes, Doc. I'm gonna open it to you for commentary on what you've heard and what do you think about the show this evening? And Loren, also, I'm going to have you come back on, and we're going to pick this up again another.
You bet.
All right. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, Loren, appreciate your work very much. Me and myself and you and, start to say Gabriel, Zen are pretty much on the same page.
Right.
I appreciate your work. And have you studied the Saturn Death Cult and the Saturn Moon Earth Matrix yet?
Loren, he's asking you.
Oh, okay. I came, let's see, back in like 2000, maybe it was 8 or 9, I came across a brief thing about Saturn, that hexagon on Saturn. But that's all the farther I went. And then just somewhat recently, I've become acquainted somewhat with Anthony Patch, right? Anthony Patch,
right?
Okay, and his drawing all these connections, and to me, that connects with day 6, or I mean seal 6 of the 7 seals in the Book of Revelation, right? The 6th seal is a hexagon, and that ties in with the seal of Solomon. Okay, so that ties in with summoning forth demons. So on the 6th seal, the full weight of demons and demonics is going to come forth. The portals will be ripped wide open on the 6th seal. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the seal of Solomon is synonymous with the seal of Saturn because there was so much Saturn worship going on. And if you read Troy McLaughlin's work, he's got quite a lot of information on it back when Saturn was our primary source of light, with our current sun well behind it, which just left a ring like a halo around Saturn. But that was back during the purple haze when there was no day and no night. It was just always a dim purple light, and the plants grew extremely large, and so did the animals.
Well, I'm not sure if he's familiar with that aspect of it. I myself wasn't either, but I will definitely do a follow-up show on this, and as well, Loren, I'll invite you back on after all these other guests that I've lined up, and then we'll do a follow-up on these angel wars and go back over this gap creation and talk about the exploded planet, because I don't know if you know about the Farsight Institute, but they are remote viewers, they're ex-military.
Yep.
And they also talk about this as well, and I talk about this in my books, in that in connection with Tiamat, the war between the Lord of Hosts and all of that. And so there's a lot to it, and we can elaborate on it. And also for those that tuned in to try to listen to the Dark Conjuring, the blood ritual, blood sacrifice, I apologize. We were not able to get to any of that. We got detracted, and I will line up a follow-up show on that. And thank you, Doc, for calling in, brother. I'll invite him. We'll do a show on the Saturn Death Cult soon as well. God bless all of you. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Good night.